Hello, I'm MG Leonard.
And I'm Sam Sedgman.
Together, we are the authors of the Adventures on Trains books.
Danger at Dead Man's Pass is the fourth in the Adventures on Trains series, and it's a bit different from the previous books because it's a journey across Europe on many different trains, rather than the whole mystery taking place on board just one train.
At the beginning of this book, Uncle Nat appears at Hal's school gates with a letter from their friend Baron Essenbach. There has been a mysterious death in his family and rumours of a terrible family curse cast by a witch are circulating.
The Baron asks Hal and his uncle to travel to Germany in disguise to attend the funeral and investigate the strange happenings at the family's home, Schloss Kratzenstein.
This story starts in Crewe, Hal's hometown. He and Uncle Nat travel to London, where they board the Eurostar to Paris. After a mysterious lunch with the Baron, they hop aboard a sleeper train to Berlin. And then from Berlin, they journey all the way to the Harz Mountains in Germany and the Brockenbahn, the last functioning timetabled steam railway in Europe. Now, to be certain this book feels authentic when you read it, we researched it thoroughly, and Sam and I travelled from London all the way to Germany to the Harz Mountains, stopping off in all the places that Hal and Uncle Nat visit. We travelled on 7 different trains in 24 hours, going from London all the way to Berlin. We had breakfast in London, lunch in Paris, and dinner in Germany. It was a fantastic journey, and it was the first time that I'd ever slept or spent the night on a sleeper train, in a cabin, in a bunk. It was brilliant.
The mystery in this story comes from the strange circumstances of Alexander Kratzenstein's death and the rumours surrounding the Kratzenstein family curse. Now, Hal has to pretend to be a distant member of the family to enable him to investigate and try to solve the case of the family curse.
In this adventure, Hal befriends the Baron's grandchildren, a brother and sister called Ozanne and Hilda, and Alexander Kratzenstein's youngest son, Hermann. But he cannot reveal to them that he is the detective Harrison Beck. No, he must lie to them and pretend to be their distant cousin.
This is from chapter 7, which is called Deceptions and Disguises. Now, there aren't any spoilers in here, but you need to know that Hal and Uncle Nat have travelled by train to Berlin at this point, and they're about to go shopping for a disguise for Hal, so that no one will recognise him. Uncle Nat seemed to know Berlin well. He led Hal from the station down to the U-Bahn, the Untergrundbahn, which he explained meant underground railway, like the Paris Metro or the London Underground. They took a yellow train to Wittenbergplatz and walked for 2 minutes before arriving at the giant glass doors of a department store with the words Kaufhaus des Westens above them. "This is the German equivalent of Harrods," said Uncle Nat. "Are we going shopping?" asked Hal. "Absolutely. Neither you nor I came with the correct clothes for a funeral, but the Baron said something that's been bothering me. He mentioned that the German newspapers ran a story about you solving the case on the Safari Star. It would be a disaster if anyone recognised you as Harrison Beck. We must take precautions so they don't." "How?" "Disguise," Uncle Nat replied, pushing the door open and ushering Hal inside. They took an escalator up to a floor exhibiting children's clothes as if they were art. Uncle Nat walked through the rails and shelves, picking up 2 shirts, a thick-knit cream fisherman's jumper and a black turtleneck. He held a pair of black chinos up against Hal's body to check the size, before picking up a second pair in navy, then piled all the clothes into Hal's arms and pushed him in the direction of the fitting rooms. Hal put on an outfit and looked at himself in the mirror. The clothes looked plain but felt luxurious. They weren't like the ones from the high street in Crewe. He looked at the price tag, but it was in German, and he couldn't remember how much €1 was in pounds. but he guessed the clothes were very expensive. He opened the curtain, and Uncle Nat nodded his approval. "The black jumper and trousers are for the funeral. I'll find you a jacket to go with them. The other clothes are for general wear. Keep the white shirt and fisherman's jumper on with the blue chinos, and I'll explain at the till that you want to wear them." Uncle Nat selected a black suit and several polo necks for himself, and black leather hiking boots for them both, adding thick socks to the pile. Then he picked out a wheelie suitcase. "For you," he said to Hal, "put your rucksack inside it. It's scruffy." "Isn't this all going to cost a lot of money?" "Yes, which is why it's a good job the Baron is covering our expenses." Uncle Nat waggled his eyebrows, and Hal grinned. On their way out, they passed through a hall of art materials. "Wow!" Hal whispered, as his eyes greedily scanned the sketchbooks and rainbow displays of pens, pencils, and paints. "I'm sorry, Hal, you can't bring anything that might give away who you really are." "I know," Hal sighed. "I'm just looking." "Come on, we've got to get to the barber." "You're getting a haircut?" "No, you are, and I know just the man to do it. We'll grab some lunch on the way." They got back on the U-Bahn, this time travelling east. The line rose above the ground on stilts, offering a view of apartments and office blocks. They crossed the river Spree, getting off at the end of the line and walking to a neighbourhood called the Friedrichshain, where Uncle Nat bought them a currywurst, a delicious hot dog with spicy ketchup, from a street stall. "This part of the city looks different," Hal said, as they ate and walked. "This is East Berlin. After the Second World War, control of Germany was divided between the victors. The Soviet Union, which we now call Russia, occupied East Germany. The Western democracies of Britain, France, and the United States occupied West Germany. They divided Berlin because it's the capital city, and built a wall between the two areas that you couldn't cross." That doesn't sound very friendly. It wasn't. For years there was tension between the East and the West, and the threat of another conflict. It's known as the Cold War. It ended with the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. Germany was reunified and the wall was torn down. "And the barber is in East Berlin?" "He's right around this corner." They turned into a quiet street decorated with colourful graffiti and entered a small barber shop with a polished concrete floor, black walls, and factory lighting. Uncle Nat warmly greeted a beefy, tattooed man with close-cropped blonde hair and a nose ring. The two men hugged, and Hal was startled to hear Uncle Nat talking in fluent German. He pointed to Hal, and the barber studied him, speaking while counting on his fingers. "What's he saying?" Hal was suddenly nervous. "Carl says we can either dye your hair dark and crop it short, or make a centre parting and shave the sides." Hal looked at Uncle Nat in horror. "I'll look like an idiot." "Or we trim the sides and curl your fringe and the longer hair on top." "Curl it?" "Your hair would stay its natural colour, but you'd have a curly fringe." He nodded. "You'd look completely different." "Do you mean a perm?" Hal imagined the look on Ben's face if he went home with curly hair. "What about when I go back to school?" "It'd be a semi-permanent curl. After a few washes it falls out." "My hair?" Uncle Nat laughed. "No, the curls drop out. Your hair goes back to being straight." "Okay, let's do that." Hal sat in the leather chair and stared into the mirror as Carl wheeled over a black trolley loaded with rollers, silver foil segments, and bottles of chemicals. He watched with fear and fascination as the man sectioned his hair, covered it in pungent liquid from a squirty bottle, and wound it round a roller that he secured with a piece of foil and a clip. "I've got to run an errand," said Uncle Nat. "I'll be back in 20 minutes. When he returned, Hal's head was inside a heated helmet. Uncle Nat stood behind him to watch Carl remove the rollers. Hal couldn't help but giggle at the sight of his hair in corkscrew noodles. His head was washed, conditioned, the sides were cut, the edges shaved into a neat line, and then Carl blow-dried and scrunched Hal's hair until a bunch of curls dangled over his forehead, sweeping down over his right eye. "These are for you." Uncle Nat handed Hal a little white bag with a black oblong case inside. Hal opened it to find a pair of thick-framed tortoiseshell glasses, like Uncle Nat's, but smaller. They have clear lenses, Uncle Nat said. Try them on. Hal stared at the reflection of an intelligent-looking, well-groomed and wealthy boy in the mirror. I don't believe it, he whispered, leaning in to study his face. The shorter hair at the sides made his face look longer and more angular. The glasses defended his eyes from the dangling curls and hid the shape of his nose. Mum wouldn't even recognise me like this. Yes, she would. There's no disguise you could put on that would fool your mother. As his uncle followed Carl to the till, Hal took out his pocketbook and drew a quick self-portrait. My name's Harrison Strom, he said to the mirror. Pleased to meet you.
We really hope you enjoy this thrilling ride across Europe. Enjoy the adventure.